Throughout Star Wars' entire history, there have been a number of superweapons. In both canon and legends, superweapons, or even megaweapons, are exactly what the name implies: weapons of extreme power with massive destructive capabilities. Thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin, the galaxy was full of both Jedi and Sith. The numbers on both sides were staggering. Neither group would reach these numbers again. These two opposing factions were constantly at war. An arms race was a natural progression to take more lives more quickly. The Sith developed some of the earliest known superweapons using kyber crystals to power and focus the destructive abilities. This is where Sidious would eventually get the idea generations later. In 3966 BBY, Darth Tanis created a kyber-powered superweapon inside a Sith temple on the planet Malachor. This weapon required a single massive kyber crystal rather than a number of smaller and mid-sized crystals. This superweapon had the power to instantly petrify anyone in the vicinity. It could not be aimed at specific targets. During a large battle around the temple, known as the Great Scourge of Malachor, the weapon was activated and all combatants on both sides were instantly frozen for eternity. Darth Momin inherited unique resources from Darth Shah, his former master who he killed to gain her position. The resources, along with a devoted group of Sith acolytes desperate for his approval, a powerful superweapon was created. His weapon was powerful enough to turn cities into nothing but ash. He thought making such a destructive device would make him worthy of the dark side of the Force. Momin took being evil to another level. His plan with the weapon was to pour the Force into it so he could freeze the look of terror on his victims' faces the moment before they died. The Jedi of the time interrupted Momin's plan. He was able to destroy a city, but was not able to freeze his victims to sadistically enjoy later. Instead, he was incinerated. His essence and consciousness stayed in his mask, but that's a story for another time. In 4300 BBY, the Chiss Ascendancy obtained a weapon called Starflash. This weapon fired a blast of tachyonic particles into a star. The result would be the star returning a far more powerful blast along the same trajectory. If aligned correctly, this return blast could decimate any target. The Starflash itself would be lost as it would be directly in the path of the return beam. The weapon was used during the final assault on Scylla. An outside threat attacked the Chiss Ascendancy and was winning the war. In a last-ditch effort, the Chiss fired the Starflash and defeated their enemies. A second Starflash was found by the Chiss nearer the Clone Wars. The most well-known superweapon is, of course, the Death Star's laser, usually referred to as the Death Star itself since the mobile fortress carried the weapon. This weapon is technologically based rather than powered by the Force, but in a way it bastardized relics of the Force through the use of kyber crystals to power and focus the massive laser. 8 kyber crystals would channel energy. The energy would be focused into a single devastating beam of energy incorrectly called a laser. The 8 separate crystals allowed the laser's power to be lowered. A single crystal could destroy a city or portion of a planet. This also allowed more rapid firing than powering the full force of the weapon. When all 8 crystals were used, the Death Star could of course destroy an entire planet. Sometime after the destruction of the first Death Star, the Rebel Alliance learned that the Empire was constructing a second, larger Death Star. The weapon on the second battle station was upgraded in every way. The targeting system was fine-tuned and made faster to target capital-sized ships. The recharge time for this laser at lower powers, as well as the full effect, could be achieved much faster. Upon Palpatine's defeat over Endor, his contingency plan kicked in. His plan was that named planets and systems would be destroyed by various means. Climate disruption arrays were devices that could be deployed in the orbit around the target planet. The array would control the weather and create devastating natural disasters. Similar in execution to the climate disruption arrays were vortex detonators. These unique explosives would grow natural storms into destructive forces to ruin planets. 3 decades after the Rebel Alliance destroyed the second Death Star, the First Order created Starkiller Base. This base was constructed from scratch. It was built into an existing planet. The planet that was sacrificed for this weapon was Ilum, further bastardizing the Jedi Order for evil means. For thousands of years, the Jedi would bring younglings to Ilum for the Gathering, a rite of passage that had them locate their own kyber crystal. The planet wasn't just chosen for its connection to the Jedi, but because the entire core of the planet was kyber. Starkiller Base would absorb the power of a star, channel it through the kyber crystals, and shoot a beam so powerful it could tear a hole in space-time, known as hyperspace tunneling. Be sure to check my channel for a whole transmission on how hyperspace works. This had Starkiller classified as a hyper-lightspeed weapon. The beam would enter the central star of a solar system and create a chain reaction large enough to destroy every planet in that system. A year after Starkiller Base was destroyed by Resistance forces, Palpatine, with the help of Sith cultists, made his return to the galaxy known. He had been working on a fleet of Zyston-class Star Destroyers that each had their own cannon based on Death Star technology. If this fleet were to be unleashed on the galaxy, nowhere would have been even remotely safe, as each cannon could destroy an entire planet. The rest of these superweapons originated in Legends. Some have been named in canon, but not to the degree that they have full storylines. Star Wars Legends is full of superweapons and world destroyers. There's almost too many. The Ares superweapon was used around 3,630 BBY. Its common use was emitting a blinding energy wave that could span thousands of kilometers. Any organic being hit by the blast would be knocked unconscious for hours. If more energy was poured into the weapon, the blast could be made lethal. This didn't have the destructive capability of, say, a Death Star, but thousands, even millions of lives could be taken in a flash. The Baridium fission device was a powerful bomb that could destroy an entire planet. Senator Bail Organa was, understandably, scared by the potential devastation of these bombs and pushed hard for the Galactic Senate to ban them. Shockingly, the weapon was banned during the reign of the Galactic Empire, before Palpatine dissolved the Senate. The Alliance almost defied the ban when they obtained one of these bombs. They planned on destroying the Imperial shipyards over the planet Bilbringi. The plan failed when the pilot tasked with delivering the payload wouldn't sacrifice the ship carrying it, that ship being the infamous Millennium Falcon. In 5000 BBY, the galaxy was embroiled in the Great Hyperspace War. The Sith created a superweapon called the Dark Reaper. The Dark Reaper would harvest the Force itself with a device called the Force Harvester. This device would suck the life force out of any living thing in its radius. With the Force sucked out of the beings, they would die. The energy would be focused into beams with immense destructive power. Jedi Knight Ulic Kaldroma learned how to resist the Harvester and taught it to fellow Jedi, allowing them to destroy the superweapon. The reconstituted Sith Empire stole project files from the Republic's Superweapon Initiative around 3,643 BBY. Weapons called Planet Prison, Shock Drum, and the Deathmark Laser were melded into one truly powerful weapon called the Desolator. The Desolator was a ship-mounted weapon with the power to destroy a planet. Like the Death Star, it was only used to its full potential a single time before it was destroyed. The electromagnetic torpedo is the name given to a truly heinous weapon. In reality, the torpedo itself is just the delivery system for a pale green luminescent substance. When released, this substance killed all organic life on a planet. To make it even worse, all organic life that would ever try to take hold on this planet would fail. The planet would technically still exist, but it would be desolate forever. The Sith Empire created a light speed cannon called the Gauntlet. The Gauntlet was built out of technology from another superweapon, the Sunraiser, and we'll get to the Sunraiser in due course. This cannon could shoot targets out of hyperspace. The resurgent Sith Empire created one and had plans to mass produce them. The Republic launched a two-pronged attack, a distraction and a team of saboteurs. Their mission was successful, but the Gauntlet's destruction was used as an excuse to go to open war. The strangely named Infant of Shah was created by the Selite people. This small statue was made to honor their deity, Shah. The idol would trap Force energy that could be unleashed as a destructive wave. If enough energy was stored, it could rip a planet apart. The Infinity Gate enabled instantaneous interstellar travel between locations by creating a massive wave of energy called an infinity wave. If the energy would be directed at a specific target, like say a planet, the entire thing and anything in close enough proximity would be sucked into another dimension, killing everything. Hyperspace travel in affected areas would also become impossible. I'm not sure if this was a permanent change. The Night Sisters captured a star temple that contained one of these ancient gates. They were going to destroy Coruscant with it, the capital of the Galactic Republic. Jedi Knight Quinlan Voss was actually a temple guardian at the time and directed the energy back on the Infinity Gate itself. Quat Drive Yards made the V-150 anti-orbital ion cannon that the Rebel Alliance used to escape Hoth. They also made a much much larger version of this cannon, the interplanetary ion cannon. I didn't think this had a place on this list since I thought it was a way to just disable a ship, or maybe many ships. This ion cannon was so massive it could vaporize a planet's atmosphere, making life impossible. The Empire's Department of Military Research created Magnapulse custom ordnance to be used in a magnetic bombardment of a planet. These magnetic bombs were so powerful that the entire planet could be left without any technology that used any type of electricity, including battery power. The Metal Crystal Phase Shifter, or MCPS, was a weapon capable of altering the molecular structure of any metal. Its intended use was to get through a starship's energy shields and poke holes in the physical ship. The metal would essentially turn to powder, letting the vacuum of space take over. On its trial run, the targeted ship's hull wasn't powderized, but so many cracks and weaknesses cropped up in the metal that the ship imploded, even after the MCPS stopped firing. We may be talking all about weapons from a galaxy far, far away, but they still had assortments of nuclear, atomic, and fission weapons. These act in the Star Wars galaxy exactly as they do in ours. The Omega Frost was an Imperial-developed weapon that contained 2 conductor towers. Anything with any moisture whatsoever between these 2 towers would be flash frozen to the point of being so brittle, even the strongest metals would shatter. While this weapon is one from Legends, there's actually a canon mention of it in Star Wars The Rebel Files. In canon, the weapon is referred to as the Interstellar Freeze Ray and dismissed as Imperial disinformation. The Hutt Empire created massive railguns called Planechanga. These guns could hurl asteroids at such incredible speeds they could crack open planets. To complete these weapons, the Hutts employed Sakians, a humanoid species with brains twice the size of that of a human. During the Clone Wars, a large spherical planet killer was developed. Whatever planet was detonated on would be destroyed. I think the planet itself would still be intact, but left a wasteland. The designer of the weapon sold it to Count Dooku. Dooku planned a test for the weapon that would have killed a number of species. Jedi Master Mace Windu disabled the weapon before Dooku could pull off his plan. The Empire had an ultra-secret installation hidden in a maw. Many super weapons were developed here. One such weapon was a resonance torpedo. This missile would be shot into a star, causing it to go supernova. The resonance torpedoes were carried by a ship called the Suncrusher. This ship was used to destroy the entire Rebel Alliance Starfleet. Years later, a rogue Jedi Knight from Skywalker's Academy would steal the ship and use the torpedoes against the Empire. The Suncrusher, also manufactured in the secret maw installation, was nearly indestructible. It was as small and nimble as a starfighter, but could be even more destructive than the Death Star. Han Solo once piloted the Suncrusher through the bridge of a Star Destroyer without even scratching the ship's hull. It could take a glancing blow from the Death Star super laser. A direct hit likely would have destroyed the ship, but a glancing blow only knocked out the engines. In the 3600s BBY, Colonel Laren Omos of the Republic Special Forces Division created the Shadow Arsenal. This was a cache of missiles that did enough damage to be considered a super weapon. The weapon was created to destroy the restored Sith Empire. The missiles that made up the arsenal could be shot through open space to hit another planet. They even had cloaking devices to not be seen in transit. The missiles would shake the entire continent where they would land. These weapons were intended to destroy the Sith Empire, as I mentioned, and the thinking was that they would prevent any future wars after the galaxy understood their potential. The force of the missiles meant that the intended target would be destroyed, but millions of civilians would as well. The Shocking device was designed with the intention that it would be the most destructive super weapon ever. Designed by an unknown Shockinese scientist at an undefined distant past date, this scientist thought the entire universe was beyond saving. They thought if they could destroy the entire thing and trigger a new Big Bang, the universe could be recreated. I could sit here and ask questions like, how did they know their galaxy was formed by a Big Bang, or why they assumed there would be another, or even if there was another galaxy to come up, who's to say things would get any better? But I don't think we need to chase down all those independent threads. The weapon was supposed to destroy the planet Shocking, where it was made, hurling the fragments of the planet through space to collide with other planets, ideally destroying those. The idea is that it would set off a chain reaction that would see the universe destroyed over enough time. Again, we don't need to dissect this one. We're all thinking the same thing. During the Cold War with the reconstituted Sith Empire, the Republic created the shock drum. The weapon was intended to destroy droids, which it did. When activated, it would create an ever-increasing circle with the weapon at the center. The power of the seismic vibrations would also increase as the circle expanded. Eventually, it would cause ground quakes and could kill organic beings by literally vibrating their molecules apart. Before the Republic could use the weapon, it fell into the hands of the Sith. I was reading about the sky cannon created on Talbor by an ancient civilization. I almost left it off the list because it was created with the intention of changing land masses on the planet's surface. The creators also intended to change the planet's tides by altering the two moons in orbit. The ancient Talborians overdid it and destroyed one of their moons. This changed things far too much. Their civilization was ultimately destroyed. Mass extinction earned the Sky Cannon a place on this list. Before the Sith were almost wiped out and the Rule of Two was created, many Sith Lords unified their willpower into a weapon called the Thought Bomb. When detonated, any Force-sensitive being, even Force spirits, would have their souls fragmented and caught in a vortex where their essence would be tortured. This horrific weapon was even more ancient than when Darth Revan recorded the secrets of it into a Sith holocron during the Jedi Civil War. The Gravshock device, or Planet Buster, was a weapon that could alter gravity on a planetary scale. It could create natural disasters or have entire cities collapse in on themselves, killing millions. The major drawbacks to this weapon were the sheer amount of power needed to use it, and the fact that the ship firing the weapon onto a planet would be adversely affected from manipulating the gravity field so close to it. In 23 BBY, the Galactic Republic was working on a planet killer of their own. They test-fired it into a star, which caused a massive solar flare. The solar flare was so big, it killed the people testing the weapon and all life on the nearby planet of Equanus. Since the weapon was destroyed along with all lives accidentally lost, it was never remade and never given a name. Zildrog is a unique superweapon. It was two parts that worked together. The first was a stationary supercomputer that could perform life energy transfer for the Sith. It also controlled a warship called the Gravestone. This weapon aided Sith Emperor Vitiate during the ritual of Nathema, where he killed every being on a planet and absorbed their life essence to achieve immortality. The zirconium ray wasn't technically a weapon. It was an energy source. It made its way to our list because if the energy were to be used as a weapon, it had the strength to destroy a small moon. Luke Skywalker used the zirconium ray to do exactly this, to prevent a rogue moon from colliding with a planet that contained life and a flight academy. The Galaxy Gun was a massive tube-shaped space station capable of traveling through hyperspace. The entire base was built to house a massive cannon. The projectiles this cannon fired were particulate disintegrator warheads, with the power to destroy a planet. Not only could the base travel through hyperspace, but the projectiles could as well. They traveled at such incredible rates of speed, they matched even the fastest produced hyperdrives. This speed and hyperspace tunneling made the projectiles near impossible to detect until it was too late. This weapon was used by the reborn Emperor Palpatine during the Battle of Onderon. R2-D2 programmed a super star destroyer, the Eclipse II, to collide with the Galaxy Gun, destroying it. The Sunraiser mentioned earlier was created by Darth Mekis during the Cold War era of the Old Republic. Sunraisers would circle specific stars that met certain criteria and leech their energy. The ship turned this stolen energy into enough power for an entire civilization. Instead of providing civilizations with enough power they would need to thrive, Mekis used it to power superweapons. I left other unique inventions that created armies that inevitably led to death off this list since they were not weapons themselves. I thought this example was unique enough to make the cut. The Imperial Department of Military Research created the Orbital Night Cloak. The Night Cloak was a network of satellites that would partially encircle a planet to block out all light and heat from the planet's sun or suns. If the array was left in place for too long, the world would be plunged into darkness and a new ice age would form, killing all life. Another weapon designated as a siege weapon but was much more deadly than that title implies is the torpedo sphere. These large disc-shaped battlements would orbit a planet with hundreds of proton torpedo launchers. Proton torpedoes weren't the largest warhead, but enough of them could break any energy shield and cause mass devastation. While this weapon is from Legends, the name, minus the description, has come up in canon sources. The Republic Senate of the Old Republic became more and more desperate by the relentless Sith Empire. In a move of desperation, they created Hammer Station. Built inside an asteroid, Hammer Station used a combination of a tractor beam and gravity cannon to grab asteroids and then fire them at desired targets. No shield in existence could repel the sheer kinetic energy of the incoming projectile. If an asteroid was fired at a planet, the damage couldn't always be accurately predicted. If the Republic intended to just destroy a military installation or even a city, much larger damage often occurred, leaving planets uninhabitable. The Starforge was technically a giant automated factory. It was responsible for creating the most powerful army of its time, in roughly 30,000 BBY. Why it's here on this list of superweapons is it would draw energy from nearby stars and harvest entire planets for resources to build these armies. It's a double whammy as far as destruction and loss of life, since the factory killed and pillaged to create the army that would go on to do more killing and pillaging. World Devastators, World Smashers, World Sweepers, Planet Smashers, or City Eaters were superweapons made to replace the Imperial Leviathan. They were deployed by the Dark Empire under the command of the reborn Emperor Palpatine. The Devastators would be deployed to a target planet, and massive tractor beams would pull up resources while cracking the planet itself. The planets would be ruined. Most of the life on them would be killed if the Devastators were left long enough. This was seen as a more efficient weapon than the Death Star, since the planet was devastated. The inhabitants would all be killed, but the resources would be ripe for the taking. The largest and most well-known of the World Devastators was the Silencer 7. The New Republic captured a still functional World Devastator and used its efficiency to repurpose derelict spacecraft. Even though this was a positive use of the technology, the machines were known throughout the galaxy as killers, and the galaxy's population cried out. The New Republic government decommissioned it in response to these outcries. The Imperial Leviathan is very similar to the Starforge and World Devastator. These massive starship factories harvested materials, leaving a wake of destruction, and churned out military vehicles. These installations didn't suck the power from a star like the Starforge, and weren't as efficient as the World Devastators that would eventually replace them. This one is not canon, but it's also not Legends. In an episode of Star Wars Visions, The Twins, a hypercannon with the power to destroy a planet is built between two Star Destroyers. This weapon was powered by dark energy originating in kyber crystals. Visions is a really cool opportunity to tell unique stories in the Star Wars universe that doesn't fall under canon or Legends, so the creators can do their own thing. While making this list, if I found a weapon that didn't cause mass destruction or loss of life, I left it off. Most of these were still impressive in their own terrible ways, but the list is already exceedingly long. Those will likely be covered in future transmissions. If I missed your favorite, which is a weird thing to say since we're talking about weapons that kill millions, billions, or even trillions, drop it in the comments and I'll make sure to do a follow-up video. Check out this transmission next for more deep-cut Star Wars lore.